back talking about MySpace, chat rooms, and all kinds of risks to young women on the internet. My next guest, Eliina, was only 14 years old when she was lured over the internet and she was raped by a stranger. Take a look at this.
My biggest fear is that I will be attacked again. Every place that I go, every time I go outside, I just have this constant anxiety. As a teenager, I always felt carefree about the world because I always was taught that everything was good. Everything changed when I was 14, when I was raped by a man that I met on the internet. One day this man instant messaged me and he said that his name was and that he was 27 years old. At first our conversations were pretty general, just like talking to a friend. He would ask me what it was like living at home with my parents, and he was just very supportive in what I was doing in school. He knew my daily schedule, and one day while I was taking a break, I noticed a person waving for me to come over. We walked around the lake and we talked about things such as the weather, and then we started talking about my biology class. And he said, well, we can continue talking in my car. When we went to his car, we were talking 1 minute, and then it seemed like in one motion the seat was down and he was on top of me. I kept telling him to stop, and he kept acknowledging that, but then he wouldn't stop. He placed his hands on the sides of my head and he held me down and continued to rape me, and then eventually he stopped. Now that he's out of prison, my fears are that it will happen again. I always feel trapped.
Please welcome Eliina to the show. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say how brave it is for you to be here.
Thank you.
It's an amazing thing. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Tell me, this man who you noticed while you were walking, he's there with his vehicle, his van?
A car.
A car. Did you know it was the same man that you had spoken to?
Not at first. I started walking back towards my class, and I noticed somebody waving towards me to come over to the car, and I just continued walking. I didn't pay attention to it. And then I looked over my shoulder again, and he was still waving for me to come over. And by that time, I kind of gathered enough information from the vehicle and also what he looked like from his description that he had given online.
This was the man?
Yes.
So that must have made you feel like, oh, I've been talking to him for how long?
A few weeks.
Okay, I've been talking to him for a few weeks, and so you were moved to spend a little more time with him.
Initially, I kept on walking. I sort of ignored it. I didn't feel comfortable walking over to his car. He then pulled up next to me, and he said, get in, we can go someplace. And I said, no, you can go park, and then we can walk around the lake. And he tried a second time to get me into the car, and I still said no. And eventually he did park, and that's when we walked around the lake.
I know how hard this is to talk about, but at what point did you realize that you were in danger from somebody who on the internet had seemed like a good and decent person?
I think the first time I felt threatened was actually when he started to attack me.
You had no clue?
No.
And I hope you were listening to this. No clue. When you heard her story, what were you thinking? This is somebody who desperately wants to get on the internet. I mean, and you're 14?
13.
You're 13. This happened to you at 14?
Yes.
What would you say to a mother like Cheyenne's mother? You had the worst thing happen to you just about that we can imagine.
Well, one thing, just from having friends, I know that if they're kept away from something, they want it even more. And there are so many ways to prepare a child to learn how to protect themselves. And at the time, the internet was something that was brand new to my friends, to our school, and it wasn't talked about. Nobody knew about any of the dangers. And so now, since there is awareness, I think there's a lot of precautions that can be taken so that the internet can be safe.
Okay, so the internet can be, so even though this assault occurred, you're telling Dawn that you would do it again. You would get on the internet again. Did you get off after this assault? Do you continue to use the internet?
I did stop using the internet for several months. And then, mainly because of school purposes,
you had to get back on. You felt you needed to.
Yes.
So you overcame that fear.
It took a long time.
Okay. Point to consider. You're always aware. You always have to be aware because, look, we have 5 women on the set, and one of them was assaulted sexually by someone she did not know who was a predator who found her through the internet. And another woman was assaulted by a friend of the family. Being female is probably the biggest risk in America for sexual assault. And it's got to stop. We're going to protect them and educate people. Next up, we're going to meet Eliina's mother, who feels guilty and even responsible for her daughter's pain. Please stay with us. We're back with Eliina, who was lured over the internet and raped at 14, and she's still suffering today as a result. Now joining us is her mother, Marilyn. Welcome to the show, Marilyn. This happened to your 14-year-old daughter. Did you ever, in your wildest imagination, believe that somebody could prey upon her from afar the way that this guy did?
I was one of those moms that always believed that people are good and that good things happen to us, and I never, ever thought that anything that horrible would happen to my child.
Now tell me, you feel guilty about it? Why? What could you have done?
I feel guilty on two levels. One, that I wasn't there with her to protect her. And even though this happened at a local college, she was only a freshman in high school, but she excelled in biology, and so she was allowed to take a college biology class. And her dad drove her to college, drove her home every day. And I still felt guilty because I felt like I should have been right there with her.
So you're proposing that you would have somehow had it in mind, Marilyn, to stay in the chair next to your daughter as she took biology? I know you're a mother, I get it, and you never let yourself off the hook, it seems, when you're a good mother. But how could you have saved her?
But, well, one point I'd like to make is it only takes once.
Yes.
It only takes
once.
And we tended to be overprotective parents because we were married 13 years before we had her. So she was a very special child to us. And she was always with us, always.
She's obviously special because she's here today. A lot of people would never come near a national television show and say, oh, by the way, I was lured as a 14-year-old and raped.
No, she's pretty miraculous.
Heroic.
She wants to do this because she wants to save other people.
Well, save your mother for us. Tell her, in your own words, tell her in your own words whether she should feel guilty or she is needlessly feeling responsible for your assault.
I think that you need to be able to let go of that part, because 6 years later, it's still with you every day. And I don't think there's anything that anybody could have possibly done to prevent it.
Well, and I think, Dr. Keith, that I have guilt on a second level.
What's that?
And that's that I always taught her to be nice to people, to be polite, to do the right thing, and that generally people were good. I should have been teaching her where to kick somebody where it would hurt.
Yeah, well,
that's what I should have been teaching
look,
her.
there are both lessons, but the bottom line is you can teach kids how dangerous it is out there, but this was number one. This was many years ago. How old are you now?
I'm 21.
Okay, so 7 years ago, the internet was newer than it is. And I'm not looking to relieve you of every facet of your concern about parenting, right? But I can tell you that predators are predators, and you had bad luck that one singled her out. And yeah, it is partly because she's a good and decent person. And you know what? She's turned that terrible, awful event in her life to our good. She's educating people, which is the best thing you can do out of a terrible, terrible life event. I wouldn't want you to be any different. I don't think these people would want you to be any different. Okay, you have a question?